BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Well, I hope you guys are liking the Madeleine McCann case because we're going to be sticking with that one for a while. We've been going through the eight-part Netflix series, and as you can see, this is part 3 now. We just watched the third episode, and it's like we're having a little bit of a discussion. If you haven't seen that series yet, then you can stay tuned because this is not a traditional film review. We're just talking about the Madeleine McCann case. But to anyone who's watched it in the past, and if you would like to see it in the future, episode number 3 has 25 minutes of just pure filler. Like the first 25 minutes of the episode could be summed up in one single sentence, where it's just like, some missing persons cases get attention, comma, but some do not. That's the only point that they tried to make in the first 25 minutes of the episode. And I know they wanted to bring in stuff like people like Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, made comments about the case. The Pope had made comments about the case. But that's not necessarily tied to the forensics and the crime scene, which not only do I find more interesting, but that's relevant to actually the mystery. I know they wanted to highlight the kind of magnitude that the Madeleine McCann case had on Europe, as well as other worldly forms of media in other locations around the world, even here in my home country of the United States. But the thing that I would say is that it wasn't really until they got to about 25 minutes then they began to actually bring somewhat of an edge to the series. There's the detective Gonçalo Amaral, perhaps the most famous Portuguese investigator involved with this. He appears in all sorts of things related to Madeleine McCann, and he even has a documentary out there that he narrates himself, just giving his perspective on it. I highly recommend that one. But we've done kind of just a discussion on that entire film here on this channel. That was like perhaps the second or third Madeleine McCann upload that I ever did. And the thing, though, that I would just kind of say is that Gonçalo Amaral was someone who, on the one hand, they say that he had a bulletproof reputation, and then on the other hand, they say that the media is like really trying to point out he's someone who would take 3-hour lunch breaks like every single day, as well as drinking on the job. All I have to say about that is it was Southern Europe. That happens in that part of the world. I mean, my friends from Italy say that on the weekends, lunch lasts from 4 to 6 hours. And I'm not exaggerating. That's what they tell me. I mean, in Southern Europe, I guess that's just the way things seem to fly. But Gonçalo Amaral brought up 3 major points that points of contention in the sort of Madeleine McCann narrative, and I would like to kind of go at those one by one. The first one is that, and we have to bear in mind, Gonçalo Amaral is trying to implicate the parents because he believes that they are kind of up to no good in this. The first point is that Jerry McCann has an inconsistent story. He always changes the details when he is forced to recap his story and recount his story, and just kind of like go through his steps that he took during the day of Madeleine's disappearance. He is very inconsistent with that. The second point is that Jerry McCann is also the type of domineering, more sort of a controlling figure in all this. He would be the sort of manipulative orchestrator of any sort of wrongdoing if it indeed took place. Once again, we don't know 100%. This is an unsolved case, and this isn't even my sort of statement or theory. That's just from Gonçalo Amaral, just kind of reiterating his point. And the third one is that the Tapa 7 could also be involved with this. They could also be sort of conspirators or just accomplices and accessories to any sort of illegal wrongdoing. And I guess we should say that there's also a fourth point, and this is one thing that they got into, and in the past uploads I said, I don't want to focus in on the window in Madeleine McCann's bedroom so much. That's just become the kind of heart and soul of all Madeleine McCann uploads on YouTube. But, I mean, maybe there is something that they did mention. The only fingerprints that were retrieved from that window belonged to Kate McCann, Madeleine's mom. And, I mean, my first instinct, well, obviously the perpetrator would have been wearing gloves if they opened that, right? But apparently there are no fibers from any gloves, there are no marks from any gloves, and granted, as the forensics team could get any sort of evidence, there is no evidence that anyone used any form of gloves. Once again, no material left behind in that way. So what I would say about that is that I'm someone who really pointed to the parents in the past as kind of like a leading theory, because I think that it really covers all the bases. And I say that because how easy would it have been for Kate McCann to have opened a window? That's all she would have had to have done. I mean, like, it so much sounds so much simpler when just Kate opened it versus no, there was this perpetrator that just slipped up through the cracks, climbed into the window, grabbed Madeline, climbed out. Nobody saw them, and they didn't leave a single piece of fiber, a single piece of DNA. Did they even breathe in the room? It doesn't look like it. I mean, they just did that so kind of effortlessly and flawlessly. I mean, I think it's somewhat simpler to say that just Kate McCann opened the window. But once again, we don't know 100%. The other point, though, and we have to look at sort of things in kind of just a piece by piece of information. I mean, we mentioned in part two that I thought it was weird that Kate McCann doesn't have any descriptions of the children, the two twins, after Madeline's disappearance. Like, she said the draft slammed the door shut, but she didn't say, oh, the kids woke up and started crying, the twins woke up and they started rustling around. No discussion of that at all. And the sort of third point is, if you listen to what she's saying, it is that she tried to gently pull the door closed, the draft slammed the door shut, but then she opened the door and saw that Madeline wasn't in the room. And I'm like, you went to check on your children, but you didn't actually check on your children? You went to close the door, but you didn't check to see if Madeline was in the room? I mean, why would you walk to your kid's door just to close it? I mean, the whole point of her walking to the door was supposedly she wanted to check on her children after being out at the tapas bar. I was like, that's just also sounds very bizarre to me. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into the details, but we got to look at everything in a piece by piece form of information. And one point where I would disagree with Gonzalo Amaral is that I don't know exactly what they were trying to show on this Netflix thing. They show a photo of the bed that Madeleine McCann was sleeping in, and he says in Kate McCann's story that she got down on her knees and like looked underneath the bed for Madeleine McCann, and he's like, "It's impossible. The bed has a mattress that goes all the way down to the floor." Well, I mean, they're showing you a photo of the bed very clearly, and it did not. There isn't enough space there for a human being, I admit, but it's like a couple inches off the ground. And if somebody did indeed have their kid missing, yeah, that's something that a normal person would do. Imagine when you lose your car keys or you lose your wallet or something, and you start, oh, well, maybe it's under the dictionary or something, and you just look under everything, and people do things like that. So I think that one is actually somewhat rather normal. Everything that we've said prior to that, I think, is actually kind of incriminating of the parents. But I've definitely kind of been more open to the concept of Madeleine McCann being abducted since I started this Netflix series because of, well, the back patio door was always left unlocked. Multiple people were going in and out of the apartment, like someone like Matthew Oldfield, Jerry McCann, Kate McCann. And if someone had just been watching the resort, they could see very clearly that, wow, that apartment is probably not very well guarded, especially if they had been watching it for a number of hours. They would know that, oh, there are children in that apartment, and it's not being watched. Okay, I mean, that sounds very easy. Like, this was just an accident waiting to happen. This was a tragedy waiting to happen, and there's no way we can say anything about, well, I mean, you don't need to hear that from me. Madeleine's gone. Obviously, this thing just blew out of control. It was just a matter of time before they lost Madeleine one way or another. Let's say that is sort of sad and gruesome as that is to say. But what I would say, though, that is kind of the kind of more culminating factor in all of this is that they finally got to the blood dog and the cadaver dogs, Keela and Eddie. Eddie was the cadaver dog, and he was the one that they brought in first. Like, they showed only only Eddie's sort of searching in the apartment to conclude the episode. I have to say though, I am very impressed with this. I've seen segments of the dogs going through the apartments before on YouTube and in various documentaries, but this showed you really just how brilliant dogs are. Can we just say that again? Dogs are just amazingly brilliant animals, and like you can just sort of see how well trained they are, in the sense that like they open the cabinets and such, and they want, like, all the cabinets and doors are open in the apartment, and you can really see Eddie going in and out. He doesn't just, like, peek his head into things. If he can, he'll walk all the way into the cabinets and just start smelling everything, and there were two major cadaver alerts. The cadaver dog was alerted one time in the bedroom on a shelf, and the second time in the living room behind the sofa. And, like, what I have to say about that is that there was the moment, though, like when Eddie started barking. he's like, just to reinforce how well these Saint dogs are trained, he starts barking, but he's looking kind of at the bed. And I thought for a second, wait a second, is there any possibility that he was actually trying to alert them to the bed? But then he just starts pointing his snout back to the shelf in the cabinet, and it's like, oh wow, these dogs are just really very, very precise. And this was done, I want to say that this was done about 80 days after the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, but I mean, dogs are amazing, and the search dogs can just do amazing things. Search dogs, cadaver dogs, and blood dogs. And hopefully we'll have a few more conversations about some of the forensic evidence that they were able to compile. But, well, I mean, we have a cadaver dog in the apartment, and I really have to say, though, that one of the things that has always bothered me about the Madeleine McCann case is that if there had been any sort of perpetrator, intruder, abductor, why isn't there more physical evidence of that? Whereas we have, I mean, where on earth is this cadaver dog getting these alerts from if there had not indeed been a dead body in the apartment? And, I mean, do you know any other families in the resort in Praia de Luz that were involved in a high profile missing persons case? Do you? Well, I mean, like, it sounds so likely that this came from Madeleine McCann, and, I don't know, that's just like, when I was thinking about it while I was watching the show, and I'm like, it's just, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Gonzalo Amaral is wrong that some parents didn't drug their daughter and that she died in the apartment and then they dis- dis- discarded the body somewhere and then a couple weeks later moved the body to another location. I hope that didn't happen. That just sounds disgusting. But it just gives you the creeps and the chills in kind of a disgusting way, though, when you're watching this and you think that this could actually be true. Oof, I hope it's not. But when you sort of want to kind of look at the kind of argument and presentation put forward, I mean, once again, I do commend the Netflix series for providing just sort of all the imagery about the location and kind of just how easy it would be for someone to maneuver around the apartment, and it'd be very easy for someone to kind of get in, because one of the things though that would kind of support almost an abduction thing is the window that we've been talking about. We mentioned that it faces kind of a parking lot, but it's very close to like a main street, a street where the pedestrians and well, motorists could even be passing by, so it'd be very easy for somebody to get from the window to a vehicle. I mean, we're talking in definitely under 1 minute, but I just think it's somewhat implausible to kind of abduct a baby or something. I mean, Madeline would have been 3 at the time. To abduct a toddler and a young child and carry them out of a window, or like, especially like, what did they use? Chloroform on her or something? Tranquilizer dart? Because I mean, most of the time when you pick up a kid or someone who's 3 years old and they aren't yours, kicking and screaming or something, and you want to carry them out a window. I mean, that's why I've just never really wanted to focus in on the sort of amount of forensic evidence that is associated with the window in the Madeleine McCann case. It's like, I don't necessarily believe that that's the cornerstone. If anything, the cadaver dog is perhaps a bigger cornerstone to this. Or if you just want to look at the kind of inconsistencies that we mentioned that are involved with Jerry and Kate McCann's stories, that could also be some very telling evidence. But we don't know this 100%. There could be some sort of explanations. I mean, maybe this series is somewhat detailed, so maybe we'll find any possible evidence that there would be another reason why the cadaver dog would be alerted in the apartment. But it's not really looking good for the parents, we can say that much. And the thing that, like, you just have to sort of reiterate, if there is any sort of manipulative personality going on, that of Jerry McCann, then he probably has kind of he's probably one of the people who's actually somewhat good at it. In the true crime world, we mentioned that there are personalities who are like, they think that they're master manipulators, but really they fool no one. I mean, O.J. Simpson has been cited as an example of that. And Jerry McCann seems like if he was indeed involved with his daughter's disappearance, then, well, I mean, he's probably fooled millions of people. I really only hear about this stuff in the true crime circles that the McCann parents could be involved. When you're sort of looking at this in any sort of mainstream narrative, or just like when they kind of do 15th year anniversary and stuff like that. Well, it hasn't been 15 years. The 10th year anniversary happened in 2017. They don't ever really point to the parents. But in some of the more forensic shows, they have to really raise the big possibility. And although this is an 8-part series, so they have to give a lot of detail, they are giving a lot of attention to the possibility that Madeleine McCann could have been involved in some foul play from her parents. But once again, though, the other two possibilities are abduction and accidental death. it would have been somewhat easy for someone to abduct Madeleine through the back patio door. But once again, where are the footprints from that? Where are the fibers that are left behind? Like where are the witness counts of, oh yeah, a man wearing a black mask was walking by the street? Where's any of that? And maybe we'll keep going through some of these, and hopefully we can have a bit of more of a discussion. But a lot of damning evidence in episode number 3.